Hello and welcome to Africa Today. I am Esther Mokwariola. In a continent where political fairy tales often have unpredictable endings, Africa and the rest of the world continue to keep tabs on Kenya's long walk through the path of democratic process. It is an unfolding story made in East Africa that features a tightly contested poll, a nullified presidential election, and a rescheduled date with destiny at the ballot. And so we ask, what are your thoughts on political developments in Kenya ahead of the Rerun election in October? You can join the conversation and share your thoughts with us on Twitter at TVC News NG. We take a report and Africa Today will be right back. Welcome on board.
Kenya's Supreme Court recently criticized the election board for failing to verify official results of last month's presidential election before announcing them, but did not find any individual at the board responsible for the failings. The court was offering a detailed ruling as to why it annulled the August 8th election and ordered a fresh presidential vote within 60 days. The September 1st decision was the first of its kind in Africa. The election board had said incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta won the contest by 1.4 million votes, but opposition leader Raila Odinga challenged the result in the Supreme Court. He says the previous two elections were also stolen from him.
The era of electoral autocracy must end in our country. In other words, that the people's vote must count. That Kenyans who have turned out to vote must know that their votes are eventually counted.
Odinga's lead lawyer, James Orengo, noted that there could be serious implications if elections are not held within the 60 days stipulated in the Constitution.
The country may be bordering on a constitutional crisis of grave proportion. The danger that we now find ourselves in is that if the elections are not held within 60 days, then he will not have the constitutional authority or legitimacy to continue to be in that office.
Interesting times lie ahead for Kenya as it prepares for a fresh presidential poll now slated for October the 26th.
Welcome back. History was made in Kenya on September the 1st when the country's Supreme Court annulled the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta for a second time, with a rerun now set for exactly 30 days from now. While the new vote will give the former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, his fifth shot at the presidency, Kenyatta will be celebrating his 56th birthday on the voting day of October the 26th. Joining me in the studio on Africa Today, I have Daniel Akinlami, political analyst and social commentator here in Nigeria. And on Skype, I have Elias Mutuma, a constitutional lawyer and political analyst in Nairobi, Kenya. Good to have you both on the program.
Thank you.
Now let's begin with you, Daniel. Let's look at the reasons why the elections were nullified in the first place. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there are quite a number of technicalities involved in what contributed to the decision of the Supreme Court in annulling the election. Contrary to the general views that Raila Odinga was able to prove some aspects of rigging and all those things, I think the details of the judgment that was released by Supreme Court highlighted the aspect of non-compliance with the Kenya Constitution, that is in the areas of the
transmission of results.
Yes, the transparency
of
the process. And the key area where the problem came from was the fact that the total result was announced before total collation of results from some certain polling units. So, and on the technical ground, that was the faulty line where the judges had to annul all the results, because you cannot have the final result when some polling units votes have not been collated. Secondly, the process for transmitting the results was also faulty. So that brought in the issue of lack of transparency. So, and I think beyond that, Raila Odinga was not able to prove that it was rigged out of the election. So on the technical ground that some processes of transmitting the result from polling unit to the national server, the electronic server, somewhere along the line, the processes were compromised. So gave the judges the leeway to declare the election annulled.
Right now, Elias, what is the possibility of a credible rerun going by the challenges and controversies on ground?
Thank you very much, Esther. We have a lot of great standing here in Nairobi. Number one is that we have acclamations that the IEBC, some of the officials that conducted the 8th of August election, should not be part of the team that is, managing the election schedule for 26th of October. So we have people claiming and pushing forward that we must see heads rolling, starting with the heads of, the CEO of IEBC, Ezra Chiloba. We have people claiming and asserting that we must see heading in the Department of ICT, because that is the department that is in charge of transmission. And the Supreme Court of Kenya found a lot of fault in the transmission method of the election. So we are not likely to have very credible elections if we have the same officials that bungled the 8th of August election still conducting the forthcoming elections of 26th of October 2017.
So what exactly can be done in this case if the president, well, that's Kenyatta, says there can't be any change of the electoral board anytime? So the electoral board will be the same members that will conduct the rerun election come October 26th.
First of all, it's not upon the president to determine whether we have changes or not. He is only one of the players in this election. We have Raila Odinga as the other candidate. My client, because I was involved in the Supreme Court petition representing one of the presidential candidates, that's Dr. Ekuro Court. We are back to court. We are going to court, the High Court again on Wednesday, to ensure that his name is also included in the ballot. So it's not only for Uhuru Kenyatta to dictate what is the way forward. We must have dialogue. And IEBC are inviting all the stakeholders to have meetings every Saturday with the possibility of agreeing on the way forward, so that we do not have all these grants. Unless we have dialogue, we are likely to have a constitutional crisis, because we have people taking very hard line and saying that unless these demands are met, then we are not going for elections. So I think the solution lies in a dialogue.
And so how likely would there be a change in the election board?
It's very unlikely. Number one, we only have some 30 days. If you look at 30 days for new people to come into office, for them to be able to familiarize themselves with the system, for them to be, properly oriented into the system, we do not see that happening. We are saying that we do not necessarily need people leaving office, but we can have at least, minimum amendments to the processes, so that at least the process appears credible. And today the IEBC has given a press briefing stating the nature of the amendments they want to ensure that they seal the loopholes that made us be in this position we are today.
All right, let's hold your thoughts for now. We need to go on a quick break. You're watching Africa Today, and we've been looking at the political developments in Kenya ahead of the rerun presidential election on October the 26th. Amidst the tense and uncertain moments in Kenya lies the risk of a constitutional crisis in Kenya following the Supreme Court annulment of President Kenyatta's re-election, while the President Uhuru Kenyatta is accusing judges of spearheading a judicial coup. Opposition leader Raila Odinga has threatened to boycott the rerun unless members of the Electoral Commission are replaced. So, Dan, we were talking about constitutional crisis in Kenya. How likely are we getting to that road already?
Well, I think that the development, if something is not done to get the key players to go in and participate in the election, Kenya may be running into a serious crisis. Like Elias said, in Kenyatta's mandate as a president will soon expire. So, like around the time the election is supposed to hold. So if the election fails to hold, there will be serious crisis about its legitimacy to be in power as the president or acting president.
But all this wouldn't have happened if the Supreme Court hadn't annulled the election in the first place.
Well, I think the Supreme Court judgment actually isn't the problem.
So what is the problem?
The problem is the politicians, the political actors. The first announcement was October 17, I think.
Yeah, October 17.
17, before it was shifted
to
26th. So the Supreme Court knew the constitutional provision of 60 days and that the election, the rerun must take place within the 60 days. And with those 60 days provision, it's possible to have a new president-elect and transition can complete. But as it is now, the IEBC has pushed the date close to the end of that 60 days. So as it is now, I think the opposition leader Raila Odinga and his NASA party, they need to show more patriotism. I've seen some of their demands and the things they are asking the IEBC to effect as changes. And to be sincere, some of those things cannot be fixed between now and October 27. They were actually demanding that about 11 national commissioners who are staff of IEBC should be removed and be replaced. And you know this cannot be possible within this short time. There are constitutional provisions for their nomination into the electoral body and how they can be removed. So even the parliament cannot sit now because of that to make amendment to the constitutional provision that brought those commissioners to office. But apart from the NASA, even the Jubilee Party too are accusing the opposition of infiltrating the system of IEBC. There are two national leaders of the NASA party had access to the security details of IEBC. So the accusation and the counter-accusation have been going. So the way it's going now, Raila Odinga and his party need to put the country first. They need to be more patriotic. This is an opportunity for him to rally the people and go back to the poll again to prove that he has the majority. So because if he fails to allow this process to complete by October 26, there's going to be serious crisis thereafter.
All right, Elias, let's look at the possibility here that, you know, Raila Odinga might get a change in the electoral board and perhaps an election is held again. What happens again if the elections are contested one more time?
Well, the Supreme Court is always open, and in their judgment, the reason which was delivered on 20th of September, they said that if the law is not complied with again in the repeat election, they are going to annul the election. So in the event that we hold another election and we still find that the law was not followed as required by the Constitution, then we are likely to see another petition in the Supreme Court. And if the petitioner is able to prove that there were systematic or systemic failures to comply with the law, then we still have another petition that annuls the election. So we are likely to find ourselves in the same position. That's why the opposition is keen on ensuring that we have reforms before we go to the next election. But as to the possibility and the practicability of us having those meaningful reforms before we can go for the next election in under 30 days. That's something that I do not think it's possible.
So what are you envisaging in the next couple of days or so, before next couple of weeks before the elections? What are you envisaging would happen?
If the politicians were genuine, we would sit down, they would sit down and they would have a solution, because it's nothing much. It's about, the transmission of results. It's about knowing who is in charge of what. It's about transparency, and that's all. So it's not something that is not achievable. But the problem is that there's a lot of mistrust, and there is a lot of ulterior motives. We even have talks that the opposition is not ready to go for elections because they already realize that they do not have the number. So they are keen on ensuring that we do not go for elections. And they have said that in their public plans, that unless we have reforms, then we will not have any elections in Kenya. They are not just saying that they will boycott the elections. They are saying they will ensure that we do not have elections in Kenya, with a view of forcing, a caretaker government, or with a view of forcing a power sharing arrangement. So that's the kind of position we are in. It's possible for us to achieve the reforms, but then I do not think that our politicians are genuine enough to get to that level.
All right, let's look at the implications of what the uncertainty might arise in the East African nation. What are you looking at? Because Kenya holds it's a major player in the East Africa, and the elections in Kenya is really a serious one. So what are the implications here if the country doesn't get a credible rerun election on October the 26th?
Number one is that we've already started seeing the signs of this crisis we find ourselves in. The investors are scared, not even just international investors, even locally. People are unable to make business decisions on the way forward because they do not get the comfort that they need. The environment is not ripe for business transactions. So we are likely to find that a lot of things stagnate. We have a port in Masaka that serves Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, South Sudan. Now, what happens if political environment in Kenya is not conducive? It means that we paralyze all these other countries as well. So I'm just praying that we will have a solution to this so that we do not affect other spheres of life.
And we hope it doesn't too. But Daniel, what can you add to what Elias just mentioned there?
Going forward, in the next 1 month, the IEBC need to boost the people's confidence in the electoral system. To the extent that some of these key players can put their trust in the system that they will get a good result. As it is now, the NASA's demand cannot be met. It's very difficult to see any reform happening in the electoral body within this 1 month. And never forget that there has been protests and violence in the past 2 years, people calling for reform in the same IEBC. There were protests in 2015, there were protests last year, led by the NASA, this coalition. So all the effort then to get the IEBC to be reformed so that Kenya will not get to this point where there will be this kind of crisis failed. So for us to now begin to look from now to October 26th for reform is going to be difficult. So the best they can get is the leadership of IEBC to sit up and prove a point that they are truly impartial.
But in the case where Raila Odinga insists that they will not do a fair game, what happens?
I think their demands are quite outrageous. What are the demands? They want about 11 national commissioners to be sacked or removed. They want the company handling the technology running the election, the electronic transmission of the results, to be fired. Then they also want the other company that printed the ballot paper to be sacked. Then how do you replace those in 1 month? Those things take logistics, takes a lot of planning. So then the Liberty Party replied them. Kenyatta and his party leaders replied them that if that's what you want, if we have to give you that, we will change everybody in the Supreme Court. So what do we see? A logjam. a crisis coming ahead. So that's why I said that the leaders of NASA, especially Raila Odinga, the opposition leader, they need to put the interests of the country above this election. So, and how this can happen, how the country can move forward now is for IEBC to boost the people's confidence. First, they should make the process to become more transparent. And secondly, they should get the key players, the two major candidates, to have access to every procedure. Let their parties mutually have access to every procedure, all the areas where they need to have agents to witness the process. The IEBC need to make it more transparent, because they may not be able to sack those commissioners. Perhaps they reduce their involvement in the process for October 26th. So I think if they can open up the process, make it more transparent, as much as the observers are coming back and everybody can see that this is truly transparent, then the winners should have credibility and legitimacy to form government.
Once again, transparency is being raised in the equation here to ensure that Kenya have what it takes. But Elias, going forward, what would you prefer would be the best solution so that Kenya can have an election held within the next 30 days?
Before I answer that question, Esther, it's important for me to note that the current IEBC as constituted is only barely 9 months old. Remember that on the invitation or on the push of the current opposition, we disbanded the previous IEBC in January. We recruited the new commissioners now in place. That was done after the opposition staged mass action around Nairobi every Monday to ensure that businesses are closed, just to ensure that new electoral commissioners, which was done. Now we have the same opposition calling again for mass resignation of all these commissioners, and they have even given another notice. From tomorrow, Tuesday, they are going to stage other mass actions to force the current commissioners out of office. Secondly, we had amendments to our election laws, which were done at the request of the current opposition. That law was passed without any amendment by Parliament as a result of a negotiated document outside Parliament. You would then expect that after those reforms and amendments, a party would be comfortable and to trust the institutions that are now mandated to conduct this election. And that's why I come back to the same issue. It's about trust. It's about being genuine. We can talk about reforms, we can talk about amendments, we can talk about transparency, but unless the players are genuine in their quest and in their request, we may not have a solution. That's why I'm saying the solution lies in our politicians coming together. They talk point blank, just without hiding their feelings, without hiding what is driving them, to ensure that.
All right, let's leave it at that. But we sincerely hope that there is a solution to the logjam in Kenya. Thanks a lot, Elias Butuma, constitutional lawyer in Nairobi, Kenya, for your thoughts. And as well, Daniel Akinlami, a political analyst and social commentator here with us in Nigeria. It's a pleasure, as always, to have you. Now it is back to the drawing board ahead of the crucial weeks of politics in Kenya, as institutional credibility and political instability will be put to test once again. Whatever the outcome of the Rerun polls, this unprecedented event is expected to influence the idea of politics and democratic process across Africa in the nearest future. And that is our package for today. But don't forget to join the conversation as usual on Twitter at TVC News NG, and also follow me for updates around Africa at Esther TVC News. Until the next one, I am Esther Makwariola, and always remember, change starts with you.